What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 62 of the Around the Crease podcast. This week, we're talking a little bit of New England lacrosse, and we're also talking about what it's like to be a high school referee. And we're starting now. Welcome back to this week's episode, and you're going to notice that it's a little bit different this week due to some travel arrangements that Michael Ward and I have going on next week. I recorded a previous episode with Matt Noonan. He is a reporter out of the New England area. He runs NoonTimeLacrosse.com. You can find him at NoonTimeLax on Twitter. You'll get all the details at the end of the show. But we talked with him a little bit about New England lacrosse. We covered a little bit of Massachusetts, a little bit of Connecticut, a little bit of Vermont, Maine, all the New England areas. But he is also a newly minted high school referee. So I wanted to get his perspective on what it was like from that aspect, because I know a lot of us like to blame the zebras and what's going on. And we've heard all the reports of the shortage of referees in our sport. So I wanted to talk to him about, from his perspective, why he got into it, what it is about it that he enjoys so much, and he also gives us some insight on what some of the older refs that have been doing it for a while, what they've seen. So we're going to get into this conversation right now. All right, I'm here with Matt Noonan. He's the founder and editor of NoonTimeSports.com. We're going to talk a little bit of Massachusetts lacrosse, and also as a newly minted lacrosse referee, we're going to get into that conversation a little bit later as well, so you're definitely going to want to stick around for that one. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be with you here, Mike. A lot of fun, and it's right outside our window. It feels like it's winter, but it is lacrosse season, so excited to be talking with you.
Yeah, and exactly. We had spring weather in Chicago literally the last couple days, and then it dropped down to the 20s today. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what we call this at this point in time, but we have weather. That's about the extent of it at this point. But I know up your way, you guys are still pretty new into your season so far, and I know there's probably not like a ton of surprises and stuff like that, but what's been kind of the early season news coming out of Massachusetts so far?
Sure, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike. I mean, I think right now it's couple games in. I think a lot trying to kind of get their, I would not say sea legs, but almost in a way trying to get their rhythm going too.
Yeah.
We were talking off air about one particular game that definitely, it's only 2 games in, but they seem to have definitely kind of seem to be in mid-season form. That's Medfield. They've been a team obviously in the Tri-Valley League. I'm familiar with them being a TVL alum. I went to Westwood High School, so getting to see the Wolverines last year beat Walpole in a sectional semifinal before losing to Concord Carlisle. Was pretty cool to watch, because I know when I was in high school, early 2000s, we would have never beaten Walpole. So not surprised to see Medfield, with the 18-6 win, the other night, and over Westwood here too. And Medfield obviously came out of the gates flying. They beat Norwood, I believe, 21-1 too last week. So Coach Isif obviously has got a team right there in Division II that I think you got to keep an eye on. And again, he's led them to 3 state titles from 2014 to 2016. So. Yeah. I never would count out the Warriors, especially this early on as well. Another team that I highlighted, and obviously we cross-promoted over social media, is Hingham. Big wins recently over Catholic Memorial and St. John's Prep. They actually have an interesting game coming up against, Simsbury, I believe, coming up about Connecticut, which is great to talk about, because that just becomes, as obviously from covering high school lacrosse, and especially the Northeast, it is really more becoming a lot more Massachusetts teams are playing Connecticut, or Connecticut's coming up to Massachusetts, or Bishop Gurton's or the Pinkerton Academies are coming down to play the Massachusetts teams too. I think we saw last week, I think you and I were both tagged in a tweet about Thornton Academy of Maine coming down to, I think, play Portsmouth or play someone from New Hampshire. So I think it's great. I think it's great to see those those cross New England rivalries here too. Over the years, I don't think it's happening this year, but remember Duxbury has played Garden City over the years too. So I think it's a little bit early on to definitely tell here too. Typical kind of a lot of teams trying to figure it out, but I think Hingham and Medfield have certainly stolen a lot of the headlines here too.
I was gonna say that Medfield team, I was gonna say Medfield. I know I don't have the scores in front of me, but I do remember I read an article today about talking about they seem to be back, and I forget what the quote was, but it's basically like they're playing a little bit angry. It seemed to be early in the season after not winning it.
Yeah, oh, no, they absolutely are. I mean, they are the team that's always been, even when I was in high school. I graduated high school in '06, and when I've come back to the area after graduating college, the Medfield Westwood rivalry is an interesting one, even for not just lacrosse, but they're literally they're right next to each other. Dover's obviously right in between too. So you have that that Tri Valley League or Route 109 kind of matchup there. Medway's down the way too, Holliston, and so, yeah, absolutely. And Coach Isip has done just a fantastic job, as we both
Yeah.
know. Again, they're off to a 2-0 start, and they were leading, they had 17 goals, I believe, by going into the fourth quarter. And you have Mike Hupman and Jack Sherman and Jack McCordick, and just getting it done right there as well. And I know Coach Isip was saying to one of the reporters from the Boston Globe was saying about, hey, it wasn't. He wanted to see that solid three-quarter effort in the fourth quarter. So something to definitely keep an eye on here too. Mentioned Concord Carlisle. Finally got that, Coach Delacondro's team coming off the D2 state championships, set back to Reading. Reading's been kind of quiet, I feel like, flying under the radar a little bit too.
Yeah. Yeah, they've
Um,
always been a solid program as well.
oh yeah, I mean they came into the week obviously with wins over Austin Prep and Marblehead, and Marblehead obviously recently scoring a win over Westford Academy, and Marblehead's a team in the North Shore, obviously, that we're familiar with, and they're going to be challenging themselves with taking on Hamden Hall from Connecticut, on Friday before clashing with Masconomet next week. And so, I think again, right now it's still early on, and a lot of teams are definitely trying to kind of figure themselves out right now here too. Masconomet, of course, is won yesterday, and I think one of the other big wins to kind of highlight too early on. We talked about St. John's Prep, but they've rebounded since that loss to Hingham, and they had a big Catholic Conference win the other night, thanks to Pat Keefe, who scored the overtime goal for St. John's Prep to beat BC High. So and BC High is something it was a school we were talking about, new coach, obviously new kind of coming into the season with the target on its back after winning the championship last year. And I was at that game, Mike, and it's still almost mind-boggling to me because they played, if I recall, they played an Acton Boxborough team, and I saw Acton Boxborough early on in the tournament. And when you look at Acton Boxborough's path to getting there, I mean they had to score. They really got off to that easy win with Malden.
Yeah.
Then they beat St. John's Prep in the quarterfinals. There was the overtime win that was seen obviously on social media. There's someone out there that still has the game-winning video of the celebration of the overtime goal when they beat Lincoln Sudbury. And then they beat a pretty talented Andover team that entered the tournament with the number 8 seed. And Division I North, as we know, for MIA when they get in, you talk about North Andover and Chelmsford and believe it or not, Medford was obviously up there. They beat Woburn last year too. I know Medford got a win obviously over over Malden the other day too. They play in the Northeastern Conference, but yeah, I mean I feel like I could go on and on here from the eastern part of the state, but it's definitely it's still early on. And I was going to say we haven't heard from our friend out of Mount Greylock. I don't know what's going on with the Mounties right now.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much about them. I know they always seem to have a talented player or two coming out of there, but they've been fairly quiet. And again, it still is early. It's still early in the season, so I usually check masslive.com, and I think unfortunately, as we've talked before, like I don't know what their reporting situation is like, but it seems to be less stats than normally at this point in the year. But then again, it still is early. Everybody's still getting. I know usually one of those things like newspapers, there's a little bit of that transition period between the winter sports and the spring sports that generally, guys can only be so many places at once. So we may not just have gotten there yet. I'm not going to discount Mount Greylock for having, the one or two studs that they usually have so far in the season. One thing I did want to ask is I know, and again, prefacing this with very early in the season, but Boston College High, off to a little bit of a rough start so far, right?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. They checked in. They were 1-1. They beat Cohasset. Cohasset obviously is a team that we both know is always in contention for the Division III. They were up there obviously last year, I believe, with Dover Sherborne, if I have that correct.
Yeah.
But I think BC High losing to St. John's Prep. Yeah, they were. They the defending Division III champions. They beat Austin Prep and then beat DS in the final 11-3. BC High right now, and that's something we talked about with the new coach coming in. They were 1-1 coming into this particular week. Lost to St. John's Prep, obviously, and then they've got CM, obviously, this week too. So this is a big week for the Eagles here because right now I think, I think Hingham, in my mind, if you were to do a top 10 or top 15, I think Hingham's got the edge over Severian Brothers. But
Yeah.
again, I don't want to overlook BC, Severian Brothers, because they obviously, I believe, beat BC High. So it's a toss-up right now here too. I don't want to overlook, Duxbury. That's an interesting matchup coming up, I believe, tomorrow coming up on Thursday, so that'd be April 11th. That's a game to certainly keep an eye on here too. Acton Boxborough again. We talked about beating Melrose to kind of get their season started too. Reading as well. I also don't want to overlook Coach Wainwright's squad with Needham because I'll be biased too. It was one of my first beats that I ever covered was the Needham Rockets, so I never going to count out any Needham team until the final whistle sounds, and they seem to be doing pretty well. I know they had a big win yesterday over Milton, and Milton's a lower end obviously in the Bay State Conference, but I think that there's a lot of parity already that's going on. But yeah, BC High right now, I'm not sure what's going on with them too much. But again, if they lose a CM, that's going to put them at 1-3, and I almost feel like Mike a little behind the 8 ball here, which I know might sound crazy saying this early on, but if you lose a CM and you lose a St. John's Prep, that's 2 conference losses.
Yeah,
that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think you always wonder with new coach, and I think Coach Leiden, I believe it was, he had stepped down, and I want to say he was stepped down kind of late. I can't remember when. I remember I saw it pretty late. Now, granted, that decision may have been made much earlier before they made the announcement because that coaching change happened very quickly as well. So there may have been some behind the scenes stuff people knew that we maybe just weren't public at that point. But I always wondered new coach. Maybe new system, depending on everybody's kind of players got to get used to and fill out. So I'm kind of like you. I don't want to discount BC High so far so early in the season, but it's always one of those defending state champs and
right.
Coach with a little bit of a history behind them as well. I think the articles I've been reading, they seemed a little bit surprised. The losses Varian, lost St. John's Prep, okay, let's see. But 4 or 5 games into the season, I don't think anybody's ready to burn it all to the ground and start over just yet.
I just want to make a correction. It's actually they're playing Cohasset. It's actually their first home game on Saturday, the 13th. So they're not playing. They will be playing CM later this month. So they got a kind of a bear of a schedule here because they look at it right. So they got Cohasset, then they've got to play Duxbury on Monday, Patriots Day here. Which for those of your listeners here in the Massachusetts. New England area or Massachusetts. It's the start of obviously school vacation week too, so you have games at all different times as well. Big game obviously next Wednesday, the 15th. They're going to play away at Medfield. That's obviously a tough one too. Mm-hmm. Then they have Needham at home on Saturday the 20th, and then CM, and then Malden Catholic, and then they'll wrap up the month with games against BC High and Walpole. So yeah, it's not going to be easy for these guys here too. And they've got to play Bill Ricca. They're going to play LaSalle Academy, which I believe is obviously a Rhode Island school. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, a pretty good one too.
So yeah, that's right. So yeah, Coach Gardner, look, he challenges his team. This is a very good program we've got, and I wouldn't count out the Hawks too as well. So. If there's an overarching theme here, Mike, I would say interesting outcomes already, but still a lot more lacrosse left to be played.
Yeah, and I think if anybody's going to take something away from this, you can realize the depth of the state. Obviously, Massachusetts has a storied history in lacrosse to begin with. I mean, I don't even think we really mentioned Lincoln Sudbury, but Coach Vaughn has been pretty instrumental in helping me build out the Massachusetts page on Lax Records. Yep. And I mean, I think we have every state champion in Massachusetts history, and I think we have actually every final matchup in the history of the state. So I mean it goes back to the 70s. So yeah, I mean we're talking, they got a long history, and I mean you can just hear how many teams, every one of those teams, anybody who follows high school lacrosse has probably heard those names at some point if they're paying any attention about some of the teams. Because
I just want to throw in here, by the way, they beat Pinkerton Academy today, which a school we talked about a little while ago on the top of this call, and so beating them 14-5, that's a pretty convincing win.
Yeah.
And we both know, obviously, Lincoln Sudbury alums are playing at all different levels. There's a couple of players on the Endicott squad that have been tearing it up, and there's obviously, as I say, Eamon Hunter, who's helping along with Grant Gregory, who played for Dover Sherborne. I remember covering Grant, obviously, back in the day.
Yeah.
Both of them are seniors and trying to help BU win its first ever Patriot League title. So, and there's been a lot of, the cool thing about BU is that there's kind of that local tie where it's a new program, it's a couple years in, and they're getting a lot of Massachusetts kids and New York kids and Connecticut kids too. But it's always good to see with your local kids that you cover and see, playing and getting to be able to help out, obviously, a local college team with BU. Coach Poli does a great job, and obviously a well-respected coach in the area.
Yeah, so we'll have to catch up with you later in the year whenever you guys have, probably, because I think Massachusetts, you guys you generally like a 20-game schedule, because I think BC won like 21 last year or something like that. So you guys play. So there's a lot of lacrosse left. I mean, it's funny because we're recording this on a Wednesday night, and one of the teams in Florida mentioned this is their last regular season game of the year. Wow. And I'm looking at the New England area, and you guys are 3-4 games into the season. So, right. What one state's ending, the other one's just starting. So it's just kind of funny because you get that. The New England area, you guys are among the last to start for obvious reasons with, the weather is just going to push those start dates back, because otherwise you're just going to end up with a raft of cancellations in March. Why?
Yeah, exactly. That's why they play the games in April, May, and June, as they say around here.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have really a good segue or transition into the refereeing portion of our call, but that was one of the things we had talked about earlier. It was like we talked about it weeks ago whenever you had just started, but I found it interesting. And Michael Ward and I have talked in the past about just referees, and it was one of those things. I think before the season. Well, not your season, but some of the teams in Florida. I think it was Florida, Kentucky, North Carolina, and there may have been one other state that was sending out basically memos to coaches and I think parents in general about talking about there's a lack of referees in some of these states to ref games, and that's becoming a problem. And a lot of referees are starting to age out. They're not getting the younger guys that come in and do it. So I thought it was interesting to have your perspective, because you're obviously a younger guy and you've just started along this path. So kind of fill everybody in. How did you? What brought you to deciding you wanted to ref high school lacrosse games?
Sure. So, I similar to you, I've been having the good fortune of obviously being around a lot of the games. Lacrosse is definitely a sport, I'd say, over the last couple of years that I've really kind of glommed onto. And it's a complicated sport. It's not a sport that, it's not like, basketball or a lot of these sports are becoming. I don't want to take away basketball, because, again, I play basketball, and obviously I've got a lot of friends that ref basketball. So if they hear this, they're going to say, Matt, you're nuts. I think that, the thing is that, the game is changed so drastically. And, I've had the good fortune of having a lot of friends that are referees or umpires for baseball or softball, and they've always encouraged me. They said, hey, if you love it, it's a great way to get to know the game better. And so, initially I was going to do it last year, did not do it, decided to pursue it this year, and they needed us. I mean, there's, no doubt, you're absolutely no doubt about it. There was definitely, and when I put it out on Twitter right before my first scrimmage a couple of weeks ago, actually, it was up in Reading, so I saw Coach Hardy and the Rockets firsthand, but I didn't have my notebook there with me. I'm sure that would look really great. Yeah, a referee that also writes. Right. I think the thing is that I would say, Mike, it's important. I mean, I think that, this game is is definitely growing, and it's the only way that obviously you're going to learn a lot more of it for any game, whether it's lacrosse, basketball, soccer, baseball, is getting involved in some sort of coaching or officiating type of way. And my belief is that, hey, if I can help with learning the game more, it's going to help me learn. I'm doing junior varsity primarily this year, a couple freshman games too, but the talent's out there. I mean, I've already had 2 games already, and the coaches are passionate. The coaches know the game. So don't overlook and say, oh, junior varsity and freshmen are a bunch of coaches that don't know what they're doing here. These are individuals that have definitely taken the time to invest themselves in the sport. And I'm 30 years old, and so obviously on the younger end of the spectrum, I think I'd say too. I think there's a few others that are in our particular group on the eastern side, because Massachusetts, believe it or not, is divided to an east and a west, even though it's not that big of a state, and we're not Maine like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
But the thing is, I would say is that it helps you learn the game, and I just wanted to get into it and learn a little bit more. I've been fortunate to be around athletics for a majority of my life, and I've worked at different levels, whether it be in college or the high school world, and have a lot of respect for those that that officiate too. It's not an easy job. I will give you that. I mean, I will say there are moments and I've reffed other sports, primarily adult flag football leagues.
Yeah.
Sometimes you walk away and you say to yourself, hey, I missed that call. Can I be honest? Yeah, absolutely. I've missed a couple of calls, but I can definitely tell you from day 1 to day 2 I was fortunate enough there. I had a game last Thursday and a game last Friday, so I was able to, have that quick turnarounds. And I was thinking, hey, guess what? Which is good because you want that quick turnaround to
Yeah.
rather than to sit around and say, well, when am I going to get that chance to make the call that I missed right there too. One of the things that I think all referees that I've definitely learned right up here in Eastern Massachusetts is that you're always going to make mistakes, but you're always going to learn, what you need to do better. Coaches are definitely going to obviously have their opinions, but you're out there to obviously do the best that you can, and officiate a sport where safety obviously is the biggest concern, but also making sure that everyone obviously is abiding by the rules. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of rules. I mean, the NFHS obviously encompasses all 50 states, as we both know. So we're playing by the same rules as they are in Connecticut, as they are up in Maine. And we got to make sure that we know the rules backwards and forwards. There's a lot of rules and a lot of things to do. But it's been a good journey thus far and a good experience. And I'm hoping to at some point, a colleague of mine actually had asked me before you did too, which was saying I really would like to write something just about officiating and maybe just kind of do that, because I think that it's good to kind of give some insight about what an official goes through. And some of my fans and friends have been able to see the stuff I've been able to do. And I'll give a shout out to my fiance, Liz Harmuth, obviously, who was a huge help with me the other night, where Sunday night, and I said, Liz, I gotta do another pump up video to get everyone ready to know that I'm going out to officiate. So I give her credit. She was the one that obviously did all the quick movements right there too. So I can't take all the credit, but it's been a lot of fun and definitely learning a lot more about the game.
Yeah. So what was the process like of kind of getting started? Like, for anybody who knows, like, I know U.S. Lacrosse has their kind of training program. I forget. I know there's an official term for it, but I'm drawing a blank. But what was the process like of getting started, and how long did it take you?
Sure. So the process, was pretty simple. There's the Eastern Mass Lacrosse Officials Association, so EMLOA. There's also the Western Mass Lacrosse Officials Association too. So there's websites out there with a lot of resources on there and a lot of contact people. So it was pretty simple, just honestly just getting in touch with one of the head of people that teaches the course. And here in the eastern part of the state, we've got 4 different sections of where you're able to take them. You got to go to class. So you got to, it's like going to night class, but you got to go to 4 of them. You got to take a test. You got to obviously, go through the U.S. Lacrosse. Got to join U.S. Lacrosse, and I think U.S. Lacrosse is a great resource. After my first game, one of the first things I did actually was I literally came home and I pulled up the YouTube U.S. Lacrosse page, and they have a great kind of breakdown of, you make the call type of, they're 90 seconds or 2-minute videos, and they have insight right there too. You got to take a test, of course, so you got to be able to know that what you're doing. And I think that, the process here is that, I feel like it's a good sense of community. I've been fortunate to rep obviously already with 2 individuals that have different styles, but I know I have my own style. When I ref football, it's a little bit more animated, a little more outgoing, because again, you have a flag football, you got to keep up everyone in the same mindset too. But I think that we're fortunate to have some really good referees that have been reffing for a long time. I mean, games that teams we're talking about, Severian Brothers to BC High to Cohasset to Dover Sherborne, the list goes on and on. Those games are being officiated by officials that I'm sitting in class with, or when we have our meetings to get together with. I'm able to say, hey, I saw that referee years ago when I was covering that big playoff game in Needham. So, it's just a testament to the fact that they want to be able to get a part, be a part of it. And so we're lucky to have a good group up here too. And, so far, I've enjoyed it, and, I'm already looking, obviously I got games this week, and looking forward to I'll be at Burlington tomorrow, Woburn, Burlington, and then I've got North Reading versus Ipswich, and later this season I'm excited. I'll have Lincoln Sudbury, it'll have St. Sebastian's, and I think every single game is a great opportunity to learn as an official. And obviously, again, like I said, I definitely come away and I feel like I learned a lot more when I'm doing college games as a PA announcer, like over at Harvard or UMass Boston. I kind of almost feel like I'm putting on my reffing cap in a way. Just kind of saying, okay, if I'm out there, look at the hand signals they're using, or hey, did they get over the 20 seconds? Okay, turn the beeper off. Did they get the 10 seconds to get in the box to, kind of for the possession? So definitely, like I said, it makes you look at the game a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And as we both know, the high school game is such different rules than the NCAA game. NEPSAC ISLs up here, including the St. Sebastians and the Nobles of the world, do play by the NCAA rules.
Yeah.
But When you're watching a typical game of like an example today, Pinkerton Academy coming down to play Lincoln Sudbury, or vice versa, they're playing by the NFHS rules, and those are kind of obviously the rules that across the country, other than private schools in this neck of the woods, are using. And I don't want to speak for, there might be other private schools across the country that are playing with the NCAA rules.
Yeah, the MIAA in Maryland, I know they do, and I think the Interac in Pennsylvania, not 100%. I know the MIAA does, but I think the Interac does as well.
Yeah. So, and you have the shot clock, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
Right. So what was your first game? Because I know that one's got to be. What were the nerves like before that first game? Who was your first game first?
Sure. My first game was Winchester Masconomet. So those are two communities, and Masconomet is a regional school. So, and we talked about Masconomet a little while ago too, because again, they're just a really good boys lacrosse program, as we both know. So walking into the game, obviously, you're initially saying to yourself, okay, like, can you do this? And, I've been on the field, I've been in situations, whether it's in the college environment or, obviously from coverage perspective. So definitely didn't feel too worried about being on the field. I think that there was some butterflies initially. You're looking around, you're playing it. Again, it's a JV game, but you want to be able to do the best that you absolutely can. Oh, yeah. But the minute we sounded the whistle, had our first face off, kind of felt like you settled in. Can't say that it was my finest performance. Walked away knowing that, hey, I have to obviously get better. But I think at the end of the day that the second game, which was about literally 24 hours later, I think going into that one, there was a little bit more of a confidence level, which, to me was good because it said, hey, I belong to go out there. Now, did I make some mistakes? Of course I did. But, I got a game, game number 3. My initial third game was unfortunately rained out, which I'm surprised. I'm telling you that. This is lacrosse, right?
Right. That's very rare.
Yeah, I was stunned too. There's a lot of cancellations, unfortunately, on Monday, or postponements or changes of the schedule too. So Mother Nature kind of threw a little bit of an interesting wrinkle in up here too. And getting over a head cold, it was kind of a blessing in disguise. But like I said, I got Burlington Woburn. That should be a pretty good game. And a lot of the JV kids, like I said, can definitely play. And one of my biggest goals as a referee, and also not just from a coverage perspective, I'm hoping obviously in the next couple of weeks, once some of my college commitments and other work commitments, kind of quiet down a little bit, is getting out to these more varsity games, whether it's the top tier games or the middle tier games or some low games too. And that's the way that I'm definitely looking forward to learning here as well. I've got aspirations. I definitely want to continue to be more of a referee, continue going forward for other sports.
Yeah.
But I can tell you though, Mike, I mean, hey, everyone's got, is going to have ups and downs, and I'm not going to say I'm perfect. Like I said, I've got 2 games in the books at the moment here too. Right. Still got a long way to go, but it's been good, and it's been a good experience thus far, and definitely have enjoyed it.
Yeah. So I got to ask you, what was the call that you missed that just drove you nuts?
Crease violation, actually. Right. I'll tell you that. Yeah, there was 2 of them, actually. I was going to say I missed 2 of them, and one of the coaches was saying, how did you not see that? There was a push play that should have been a technical foul, so it should have been a flag down. Obviously doing the referee motion right there.
Yeah. Just practicing that.
Got my stuff behind me. So yeah, there's moments like those that I say to myself, hey, and then what was helpful, honestly, Mike, was, so I'm watching some of these play out, Bill Ricka Drake it. Next day, I'm sitting high above in Harvard Stadium, and I've got Harvard Cornell, and I saw one of the exact same calls that I missed, that the referees obviously at that level got.
Yeah.
I don't think the Cornell or Harvard coaches would have been too happy if someone missed a push in the crease. But it was helpful for me to be able to identify, hey, that's the call that you missed, and that's how they handled it. And that's what you got to make sure that you do this. Think about the Harvard Cornell play. Now, again, people might be thinking, what the heck is this guy saying? But from my end, it was helpful to be able to watch that game, 2 days after going through your officiating and saying, okay, this is a total different level, but, these guys started where you were, and this is where you have aspirations of one day being.
Yeah, and those guys probably have a few more than 2 games under their belt, so I don't think don't judge yourself too harshly against from where they are where you are. But I think it's good, yes, that you recognize like, oh, that's the play you missed, because that just shows like obviously you want to know like, oh, I am getting better, I am improving on this. Yeah. So what's been I mean, obviously only 2 games in, but people, I think I feel like traditionally from refs, like blind, like everybody knows the cliches when it comes to referees and stuff like that, and I think that's what people generally hear and what people associate when you talk about referees. But I'd like to hear, like, what are some of the positive things that you've seen, in your two games, or just in the studying and with the people you've talked to, because I'm sure they've probably shared stories with you, about what it was like for them, or whatever. But, like, what are some of the more positive things that you've seen or experienced so far?
Sure. So I think the one of the biggest things is just the camaraderie, I would say, is what it is. The Eastern Mass Lacrosse Officials Association, I've only been around with them for a little bit, but I think that one of the things that I would say is that we have a great group of veteran referees, those that obviously have coached and know the sport, all the way down to a bunch of newcomers too, and we're all coming in with different experiences too. My experience a little bit different, almost similar to yours too, with the reporting side and working in college athletics as in the sports information office. So scoring games as from a statistician. So having obviously in dealing with a lot of college coaches in the New England area from coverage in noontime sports, learning how to handle those type of situations. I think that that's the thing that I really enjoy the most is that when you can it's the same thing. I mean, I was talking the other day with a good friend who's also a first-year referee. He hasn't had his first game yet. His is coming up soon. But I was saying, we were talking, he's a basketball official, and we were talking about some of our experiences in adult sports leagues or in the basketball world. And I was saying, when you have the partner that you have good camaraderie and good chemistry with, it really makes the difference. It helps you obviously understand the game, but it will able to help you and your partners identify where, hey, Matt, you got to, you missed that call, or hey, James, I noticed you didn't make that particular call too. And that was something that I felt was very helpful when I was reffing flag football for a couple of seasons, going back to the spring of 2017 up to last fall. And, to me, I think that we got a good group of people that really want to learn the game and really want to be able to help. And we've had some great, people come in. Sean Murphy, who's a very well-respected referee. I think he's Ref Murph or Coach or Ref Murph, one of the two. His brother's the Bentley men's lacrosse coach, who's a great guy. And, obviously they're local guys. And he's an inspiration, I think, to myself and to others. He's a Bill Ricka guy. I think he played maybe either low-end D2 or D3 lacrosse, but, he's now obviously a pretty high-end up guy. I think he was reffing overseas last summer, maybe with the games over in Israel, I believe, possibly. But, he's very involved with the U.S. lacrosse. And I think that the biggest thing that they all stress to all of us is that, hey, this journey is all based on what you want to do. If you want to really invest yourself, you can really grow. You can become the referee that you want to be, too. I'm sure there's referees that are, have been doing this, as we alluded to, the Harvard Cornell referees. I'm sure some of those guys have been doing this for 15, 20, 25 years. The other night I was working the UMass Boston men's lacrosse game when the referee that I was dealing with was doing the shot clock, which again is another good way to also help learn in the game too, comes over to me and says, hey, it's great to have young referees that are doing this. I've been doing this for 20 years. I ref mainly college, but I have some great memories from refereeing the high school game too. And I think that as the sport continues to grow and evolve, not just here in Massachusetts or in the New England area, but across down south, out west, out towards your neck of the woods here too, where I have family out in California. I know that obviously that's getting obviously a lot bigger out there too, even in the great Northwest as well. You're seeing a lot of names populating, especially I can tell you from writing for Inside the Cross, covering D3 women's, you're seeing a lot of those names pop up on George Fox and Claremont Mine Scripps in Colorado College. But I think that, there's when you can bring a group of people together that want to do something good for the sport. That's what makes this exciting.
Yeah. So just kind of wrap up, like, who do you think should try and get involved with this thing? Because obviously, I think, like, I got involved with reporting because my talent level, my passion for sports far exceeded my athletic ability. But who are the type of people you think would be best fit for refereeing and getting into it?
Well, I saw an interesting tweet after the Final Four the other day about saying, hey, to all those on Twitter, in the Twitter world, if you think you know a thing or two, maybe it's a good time to sign up. Unfortunately, it seems like across a lot of the sports, not just in lacrosse, but there's definitely, unfortunately, a downfall of numbers or retention obviously seems to be a big issue. We talk about coaches. Sometimes, unfortunately, parents can be a factor too, administrations as well. But I think the biggest thing I would say to anyone is that, hey, if you have a love or a passion or you want to really learn that sport, it's a great opportunity to get to join the committee, join the groups, whether it's, by, or obviously getting involved with like a U.S. lacrosse, take advantage of the resources they provide too. I mean, I think that's something that I know that I'm definitely going to continue to use, going back to, as I mentioned, the YouTube channel.
Hmm.
But I think that anyone obviously that's got a passion for sports, and I think a passion for the game, doesn't have to be lacrosse. It can be soccer, it can be field hockey, volleyball. There's the opportunities are out there. I have a lot of friends and colleagues, believe it or not, that have become good reffing friends. And when I decided, and I told them that, hey, I want to pursue lacrosse officiating, no one said to me, oh, you're going to regret it. Everyone commended me, said, great job. They said, I'm a football referee, or I ref basketball. You definitely see the crossover for sure. Like, I think there's a lot of hockey officials and basketball officials because, again, there's parallels from both those two games that you definitely see in lacrosse.
Yeah.
Spacing is a great example too, where the lead referee is going to be almost down the equivalent of where the baseline would be in basketball, and thinking about blue line, red line for hockey right there too. But I think that honestly, it doesn't matter what, obviously get involved. I mean, I know that on the women's side, they were looking for referees, and I was happy to promote that through my social handles as well, whether it was through my personal one of Maddie Noon's 11 or Noontime Sports or Noontime Lax. Because again, I think that it's great if you want to get involved, and we need referees. We certainly need referees at all different levels, because the game's growing. There's more kids that are getting involved, whether it's lacrosse or baseball or softball or whatever. And they're definitely going to need that. And I think I know this is a lacrosse podcast, but I'm going to be an advocate. I went through the USA football training a couple summers ago online for flag football, and it was a great experience. And now I feel like I'm able to go out there when I do flag football and not only be able to officiate the rules the right way, but also teach. And that's one of the things that I admire about this opportunity, being able to, take a young man or young woman and be able to say, hey, this is how you have to do it. This is what you should be going through. This is the follow throughs.
Yeah.
And I also kind of go into the mindset too, which might sound a little bit cheesy and corny, but it's always been, I strive to try to get better one day at a time. I know it sounds like a crazy cliche sports analogy type of thing that we always hear from, Bill Belichick all the way down to your local high school coach that's coached JV volleyball. But I think that, at the end of the day, the coaches make us better, our referee groups make us better, the players make us better. And as long as you're able to invest your time into it, I think that that's really what's going to help you. And like I said, it's been a great experience thus far. And I'm always happy to definitely tell people if they'd like to talk or communicate, they can tweet at me. I'd be happy to get the conversation started, whether it's online or offline. But we certainly need referees more across the board, not just in lacrosse. And if you got a passion for the sport or you want to learn more about it and get involved, hey, look, there's more teams that are popping up, more programs that are coming out of nowhere, and they're going to definitely need more referees and more bodies. So it's a great opportunity for, if you love sports, to try something different. And as someone similar to you, who's obviously bounced around in the communication world and it continues to dabble in the media content creation. It's something I've found is what I love sports, just like I know as much as you love sports too, Mike. Yeah. So it's honestly a great way to be able to stay involved in the world of sports, but in a different role, and you can grow in that role too.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we've obviously talking lacrosse. I mean, they say it's the fastest growing sport on 2 feet. So as the sport grows, the need for referees, because obviously it's one of those things like. I mean, I've known coaches that they've missed their games because they have assistants that can take over, whether it's for family obligations or something just happens, they can't coach the games. The game can go on without the head coach, but if the referees don't show up, there is no game. I mean, not to say that the head coach is expendable, but I've known coaches that they've missed the first half, they've missed games, and the game does go on. Referees don't show up. There's, that's not going to. If there's a lack of them, I mean, I know there have been games canceled in various states. I haven't read about it so much this year, but then again, in past years, I've read like games have been canceled because they couldn't find referees. I think it was in Florida a couple years ago. They had to cancel some games because they couldn't find enough referees to ref the game. So it's one of those things like a lot of states are in dire need of it, and as this sport continues to grow and get bigger, that need and strain on that pool is only going to get more. So like if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, like it's definitely one of those things, like if you have a remote interest, it's probably worth just going through the process, because maybe it is one of those things you find out like, oh, I like this more than I thought I did. Or if it's one of those things, if you're listening to this and you're one of those guys that sit on the couch and complain about the referee blowing the call.
I could do like this guy does.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you could do better. It's one of those things like, all right, now's your time to prove it. If you think you could do better. Exactly. Put your money where your mouth is and go for it and see what it is, because I've talked to guys, and it's one of those things like it's not as easy as you think, as you mentioned here, and I think you've explained very eloquently. Like, you're gonna make mistakes. Like, you're just a human out there, and you're learning the game. But even guys that are experienced, like, you're gonna miss things because you still have a human set of eyeballs. You have, we don't have AI doing this stuff yet, where
Not
this
yet,
stuff
not
can
yet,
process,
yeah.
millions of times in a second. So, there's still human eyeballs that have to keep the eyes on this stuff. And obviously with lacrosse, it happens fast, and there's a
Yep.
lot going on. You're gonna miss stuff every now and then, and mom and dad may just be watching their one kid. You're watching,
Oh, 20
all
kids,
of
and
them. Yeah.
yeah, you bring that good up. I mean, there's the over and back, and then there's the offside. So, yeah, you bring up a really good point. I mean, when you're going on transition and you have substitutions coming into Mike, so yeah, it's there's a lot to get in on, and occasionally the referee, the coaches will say, hey, they're offsides, and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, you're looking at the entire thing. So yeah, it's you're right. It's a fast moving sport, and there's a lot of bang bang plays that happen too as well.
Yeah, and I always find it funny because you always hear, mostly in NFL games, they're like, "Oh, or even basketball, it's like good non-call," and it's one of those things like if you're officiating from like these are the rules, there really is not a good non-call, but
No,
no, there is like some people maybe the ref missed that and they're like, "Oh, people aren't mad," but then again,
right.
like it's just one of those like it's one of those like the more and more I read and more I learn, like I think it's one of those like I think referees probably get the short end of the stick more so than a lot of other areas in various sports. You don't really hear anybody yelling about the peanut guy at baseball games, so it's like one of those like.
Exactly.
But I'm not going to be innocent. Like as an Oriole fan, I railed against the one of the umpire when they lost to the Yankees when the little kid reached over and stole the home run ball. Like that was our I'm gonna forget the Cubs guy's name, and as a guy living in Chicago, I'm probably gonna get thrown out of the city. But you guys know who I'm talking about. Like I've done my fair share of yelling at refs on the couch, but I like to think I've grown and learned over the years and and matured and realized like it's not quite as easy. It's easy when you're sitting on the couch and you have the benefit of instant replay.
Yeah,
It's really easy.
Yeah, or if you have an index card in your pocket in your jeans territory. So yeah, I was gonna say help my Dallas Cowboys for at least 1 week, but that's one of the craziest moments as an official that I've watched, and I didn't realize he's a basketball guy too. I know he was chiming in during the March Madness a couple of times when I tuned in. So there's another guy right there. You want to be like someone like him. I mean, there's referees Mike Pereira on Sunday afternoons. You can be that Mike Pereira eventually, maybe for the PLL down the road, or maybe eventually, hey, who knows, where things are going with Major League Lacrosse or other lacrosse leagues, you could be that guy one day that they could say, hey, listen, we got Mike Loveday on the line, we got Matt Noonan, we got Joe Smith, and hey, what did you see on that call?
Yeah, I think it'd be great for people to at least if you have any remote interest, then just kind of check it out. See, maybe it is for you, maybe it's
Without a
not.
doubt.
But it's definitely worth something. I think worth exploring. And as this sport continues to grow, something that is definitely in need, probably more so than some other areas. So, well, Matt, I'm gonna let you go, but before we do, let people know if they want to follow your refereeing journey or if they want to follow your writing. Like, where can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go film my next promo right now when we get done with this. I'm just kidding. But no, I was going to say you can follow com on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. We have obviously a lacrosse specific Twitter handle that's at Noontime Lax, NOONTIME Lax. You can follow my personal one at Matty Noons, MATTYNOONZ 11. But Noontime Sports, and we'll definitely keep tweeting at you with our New England notebook. So we got to talk about Greenwich, I guess, next time or something.
Yeah.
I feel like the Connecticut folks are saying, wow, he keeps tagging CT Game Time and giving Hearst Media a lot of love. Why don't we talk about Greenwich?
And again, it's one of those like it's still like it was hard because I know we wanted to do this, and some of this was predicated on scheduling conflicts, but it was one of those like it's still so early in the season. It's hard to talk about some of these areas because there's really there's a few games, but you don't want to make someone's judgment off 2 or 3 games into the season either. But like, everybody's it's time to pack it up. Quit your season. You lost 2 games. Like, no, that's not it's not the case. So it's hard for your area because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this like they've been playing for a while. I mean, Maryland's kind of like they'll be done in May. Like, it's one of those like some states are wrapping up and you guys are really just getting started. So it's
No,
it's tough.
absolutely. I mean, Greenwich beat Wilton in a crazy overtime game, so that's a big FCIAC win last Saturday, and obviously Jack Fada and Will Monticey, or as I say, Monticey. I know I apologize, I'm butchering his name, but the fact that obviously there was a tough, over 7-6 overtime loss to John Jay, so it's hey, good for Wilton. I mean, that's the Cardinals are 3-0, obviously as of last Saturday, and Wilton's 1-2. So we'll talk maybe Greenwich next time we connect, but just want to give a little love out to them too. Hey, Daniel Hand too. I mean, they're like the door. They're like they get taken to the ball and they just kind of get dropped off at the door or something like that and say, oh, we'll go through. You hang out here the past couple of years in the CIAC. So and New Canaan, I saw them beating winning a championship for basketball. So that particular area of Connecticut is just on fire when it comes to that sport in lacrosse.
Yeah, and I think I couldn't let any mention of Connecticut can't because it was Darien and Ridgefield. It was the rematch. I wrote about it in my Northeast notebook this week, but that was a game like I think it was one like I was not surprised by the outcome because I had a feeling the Blue Wave was going to come out a little irritated because Ridgefield ended. That was such a
right.
Darien was 76 straight games, which is the third longest streak in the nation of all time now. And I mean, not to say that they would have really challenged for that 91 game winning streak this year, but if they had gotten through that game, and from what I read of the report, I guess Ridgefield did a little bit of the hold it. They held the ball a little bit to keep it, which is a fantastic strategy when you can't outscore the team. It's like you got to win the game, but it's one of those like I think it rubbed some people the wrong way, but not the Ridgefield fans. But that rematch was, I think on Monday. No, it was one day last week. I think it was last week.
Yeah, So Darien's 3-0 because they beat Yorktown of New York, they beat West Hill, and then Ridgefield obviously is 2-1 with the loss. Defeated Norwalk 21-1, and then Briarcliff, New York. So they at least rebounded after losing to Darien, I believe, too. But yeah, they've got they're actually playing Greenwich on this particular evening. So and then Fairfield Prep is off to a 2-0 start as well. Glastonbury's 3-0. Wilton again at 1-2. I'm not going to count them out just yet. I mean, they're playing John Jay and they're playing Greenwich. So I mean, they beat Stanford 16-2. So I guess the only other team from Connecticut right now. I mean, it's still early again. Like here's Mass. Weston win over Notre Dame, West Haven. They beat Immaculate, then they also beat Fordham Prep out of New York. So they got a good showdown coming up, obviously on let's say the 16th. So next week when they take on Newtown. So that's going to be kind of obviously a tough one for them too. But yeah, Darien, Ridgefield, New Canaan, Fairfield Prep, and Greenwich. And then Glastonbury too. But yeah, I mean beating Ridgefield and then obviously beating Yorktown too. Yeah. Darien right now just continues to be the team to beat in Connecticut, which is no surprise.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see. I'm actually going to be seeing them in a couple weeks because they're playing in that Geico lacrosse showcase at St. Anthony's here in a few weeks, and I'm actually heading east because there was too many enticing matchups for me to miss that.
Yeah, you got to be there, Mike. Got to be there.
And I've gone to the Geico thing the previous 2 years, so it was kind of like I kind of took it for granted that I was going to go, and I was like, well, when I saw the lineup, I was like, well, now I got to go.
Right? No, absolutely.
But I thought that was probably the perfect sense. Started in Massachusetts, talked a little bit of ref, finished in Connecticut. So I think that
we got to give the Nutmeg State a little love here too. Well, next time we'll try to get some Thornton Academy of Maine and a few others obviously included as well. But yeah, those are kind of I guess kind of a few hot takes or some thoughts right now I could give you from it. I mean, the other one too is Champlain Valley up Vermont. Last week, obviously a 14-7 win over Rice. Carissa Averill highlighted with 2 goals and 2 assists. Champlain, as we both know, is a powerhouse in Vermont for high school. So they look like they probably are off to a good start, and they probably should again be the team to beat. I'm thinking it's like the equivalent of Division I up there.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. Like those are states that I mean, as we've talked and mentioned earlier, like the media landscape is challenging, and obviously the smaller the state, it seems to become a little bit even more challenging because in some of those states, lacrosse just isn't as widely publicized as others, and obviously the smaller the state, probably the smaller the newspaper, smaller the staff. So and tough to figure out which games are going to get covered from some weeks. So we definitely.
That's right. It was Division I because they beat Bellows Free last year, 16-6. So that was to say, Coach Trevithick has definitely got another good team and 17-1 last year, and obviously off to that good start here too. I guess you could also say right now, Harwood Union. U32 has always been a team that I've always kind of kept in my radar when I've had to do some of the high school stuff. a couple of years ago too for Division Two. But yeah, Champlain Valley right now Union should be. I mean, if you get off to a good start, beat Rice, I think that they're probably again the team to be. They've won consecutive championships, so I think
Yeah.
that's be hard to kind of derail them at this point.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to have you on again later, kind of when some of these states have a little bit more season under their under their belts. So
Yeah.
probably a few more games to talk about, and I think by that time, it'll be fun to revisit our earlier conversations because that could very well be the only two games BC High loses for the rest of the year. So
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, yeah. Honestly,
completely different conversation at that point versus this point. So we'll have to revisit that. So Matt, I appreciate you being on. Thank you so much. And again, I'll have links to everywhere you guys can find Matt online at laxrecords.com. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thanks a lot, Mike. A lot of fun.